Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV from Lee Enterprises. I'm Terry Lipshetz, a senior producer at Lee and co-host of the program with the legendary Bruce Miller, editor of the Sioux City Journal and a longtime entertainment reporter. Bruce, you're back. So you took a little week off. I mean, the listeners wouldn't know this because we record these in advance, but yeah, you were gone.
Bob Barker, here I am, right? 99. But yeah, and you know, I really got a chance to dig into TV and see what's there, because right now, normally I would know all of the new shows that were coming out in the fall. I would have seen all of them. I would probably have talked with the people who were involved. And this year is this big question mark. We don't know what we're getting. I don't know what kind of shows are out there, what kind of period we're going to be going through, how long the strike will last. It's very, very weird. And so what I've been doing is revisiting things. And one of the things I did do, I was scared to death of watching Dahmer when it first came out. I really was. Because is that giving him too much credibility? Is it, endorsing something that I don't want to be a part of? But it's nominated for a lot of Emmys. And so I thought, I should watch it. I should see it. Well, I was so scared after the first 2 episodes. I thought I got to watch something that's going to kind of calm me down a little bit. And so I found Election on Max. They're kind of pushing it now. Do you remember Election? It was an Alexander Payne film about Tracy Flick. She was this kind of rabid girl who was running for student council president in high school, played by Reese Witherspoon. And Matthew Broderick played the advisor to the student council. And fascinating to see it again, because Reese wasn't that big when she made this, and Matthew was kind of coming off his Ferris Bueller run, and the movie was a hit, but it's now prompted a sequel. There's going to be a sequel called Tracy Flick. What is it? Tracy Flick doesn't win, or doesn't always win, or shouldn't win, or I don't know. It's based on a new book. And they decided to go back and do it. And Reese is producing the thing. We'll see what happens with that. But it was fun to see that, because it did cleanse the palate from Dahmer. And it did give me a chance to kind of look forward to something that will be coming. Paramount Plus is actually doing it. I don't know how far they are in the process, but it is scheduled for the next year.
What was your overall thought on Dahmer? Because I know this was a little bit of an older one. It was last year on Netflix. I watched it, especially because of, living in Wisconsin. Even though it happened before I lived in Wisconsin, it's still something that people talk about, a lot out here. What were your thoughts?
Like I say, it was creepy, but you can tell it was a Ryan Murphy product, because like his American Horror Story and all those other kind of things, it has that edge that you go, oh my God, I think it's going to go over the edge. I think, and it did. I thought some of those murder scenes, or just even opening the refrigerator, was enough to send me reeling. But Evan Peters does a good job, because you do see kind of the groundwork that's put into play that makes him kind of screwed up. And he plays it very kind of low key. And then you see what he does, and it's like, whoa, this would not be made as anything but a streaming service thing. I don't know that I know that they've done Dahmer movies and stuff, but they've never done it this intensely. And then I looked up the story of him online. Of course, you Google everything, right?
Right.
And you look and you see, well, how many did he kill? And then you realize, I've seen 2 deaths and there are like 17. I'm going to have a long haul with this, and this is really hard for me to watch. So, it was fun to see Michael Learned in there as his grandmother. And, there are good supporting performances, but it's tough. It's a tough slog.
Yeah, it was difficult to watch. I'm glad it didn't get as gory as it could have been. I mean, that was the one thing that I really, because I'm not a big gore kind. I don't like horror movies. I don't, that's not my thing. And but I do like a thriller, like Silence of the
Right.
Lambs, which is the only movie I can think of that's really comparable to, you know that's obviously fiction, although based on some aspects of reality. With this, I didn't need to see him like dismembering everybody and all that. So I'm glad it didn't quite go down that road. But it was very difficult to watch. But it was also fascinating, um, because the story. I don't think the story's been told. It's been told, but it's not like some stories that just keeps on getting retold over and over again. I don't. This is the deepest dive I think I've seen on Dahmer to date.
I don't think it needed 10 episodes. I'll be honest.
No. Oh, no, no, no.
And I kept questioning why people didn't complain more. Like when he's in this apartment, he's got all this crap and the smell is bad, you'd complain. And I think somebody would do something. And then you see these instances where the cops are in the place and they kind of just bypass it. It's like, oh yeah, we'll move on. And I would be screaming at the top of my lungs. Plus, here's the other thing. Never go home with somebody that you don't know.
Right?
Never. I mean, if somebody says, come on over to my house and we'll have a drink or something. No, that is a big NO that you can put on anybody's door, and do not do it.
Right.
I
won't even sell something on Facebook Marketplace and let somebody come into my like, no. We're gonna go to the parking lot of the Quick Trip and we will make a transaction there, or
my
somewhere
wife will be holding a gun on you at all times as I pass the merchandise to you. Right?
Yeah. There is no way. I mean, unless it's like we sold our swing set for the kids on Facebook Marketplace. Obviously, somebody's got to come to the house and pick that thing up, but. It's like I'm doing a deep dive on your face. I'm like looking to make sure you seem halfway normal or more.
Yeah.
And yeah. No, I'm with you. And I remember too when I watched a Dahmer with my wife, the thing that we kept on commenting over and over again is like, why is this thing 10 episodes? Because on one hand, it became a slog after a while, but we couldn't stop watching because we kind of wanted to know. I mean, we know what happens, but you kind of wanted to know what happens, if that makes sense. So it's like we hit that point where we're in it for the long haul. So I guess we're gonna suck it up. But yeah,
I wanted to see Niecy Nash because I like her, and she's nominated for Best Supporting Actress, and she's in right away at the beginning, and then she disappears for a long period of time. And so I thought, well, there must be some big scene that she gets at some point that would have justified her getting nominated for Best Supporting Actress. So I'm not done with it, but I always know now that I have to have something that's very light afterwards. Okay. And I have been looking at, streaming is still putting crap out there. There's still stuff out there. I think Amazon had Red, White, and Royal Blue. Have you seen this? It's about I think the American president's son, and then like some spare in the British lineup become secret lovers. And of course, this is a huge scandal all it is just a romance that you probably saw in Hallmark, except it's two guys and one is British and one is American. That's about all it is. And they were getting a lot of attention. I mean, interesting, but I don't know that that's something that I would mark my time off to see.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as kind of controversial as I thought it would be. And there are a lot of ones like that are now popping up. You're going to see in the next month on Hulu, Theater Camp. And Theater Camp is this kind of mockumentary done by Ben Platt from Dear Evan Hansen and a bunch of his friends about going to summer camp for theater kids. Yeah. And it looks darling from its previews, but who knows? And that's one of those things. These films, there are a slew of these films that maybe hit a week in a market and then disappear because they can't stand up against the pressure of a Barbie or a Oppenheimer. And Barbie, look at that. The money that Barbie is rolling in, she never made that much money when she was a doll. So now as a movie, she's just raking. And the sequel is probably already not being written by the writers who are on strike.
Right.
But yeah, and so you see these films that maybe will get a window, but if you aren't watching very carefully for them, you're not going to find them. One that opened this last week was called Jules, and Jules. It stars Ben Kingsley and this is what I loved. He's 78, and he's like seen as this real doddering old man. And I'm thinking, God, I'm closer to 78 than I am to, 21. And an alien lands in his azalea bushes in the backyard, and he tries to tell people about it, and they just think he's just out of his mind and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he needs to go to assisted living. Well, it is an alien, or there is an alien there, and he communicates with him, and two friends of his also get to get in on the secret. Jane Curtin is one of the ones, and it's a very, very clever film about aging and what kind of things people go through at a certain point in their lives. It's very much in the tone of what Clint Eastwood has been doing lately. Okay. It's his Gran Torino kind of concept, where old people aren't kind of given their due for having an opinion or, being feisty or whatever. It's just kind of, that's the effects of aging.
Yeah.
Was there an alien? Is it just all in his mind? But it's a cute film that it'll make its rounds, and you'll see it somewhere on your schedule or maybe on a streaming thing. If you remember last year at the Oscars, there was this thing called To Leslie.
Yeah.
Andrea Riseborough was nominated for Best Actress for that. And like everybody goes, where is this? How do I see this To Leslie? It's nowhere. And it wasn't nowhere. And it's like these little films that crop up, and then suddenly after it gets traction, somebody will sell it to a streaming service, and then it pops up. And I have since seen To Leslie, and it was good, and it should have gotten some kind of attention, but the Bigfoots kind of stomp them out, and you don't find them. But there is a whole herd of them, a list of them that I went through and said, you know what, these are ones that maybe we need to look at before the end of the year.
Okay, well, that sounds like an interesting list, because we are running out of things. I don't want to say we're running out of things to talk about, but we're in this interesting period right now, because you mentioned, of course, that you would normally be out in LA previewing the fall season. We have no idea what's even going on because of the strike. This writer's strike and this actor strike, it is looking like they're digging in for the long haul. I mean, just last week while you were gone, Fran Drescher, the president of the Screen Actors Guild, was talking about this being an inflection point, and they're waiting on a deal. So I actually have a quick clip. We're going to play this really quick, and we'll listen to her and then bring it back, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and then dive into your list.
Sounds good.
Actors Union President Fran Drescher says there's been no negotiations with the movie and TV studios on a new contract, as actors have been on strike for 6 weeks. I'm Archie Zaraletta with the latest. SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher says the union is getting the silent treatment from the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, which represents major studios. Drescher says the contract dispute is at an inflection point.
I don't think anybody that's in charge at the AMPTP quite understands that this is not like any past negotiation.
The actors' demands include better pay and protections involving artificial intelligence. The studios have said their offer includes historic pay increases and an AI proposal that protects actors' likenesses.
And then, that was last week. And then just right before we hopped on, I got another clip, because the actors from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul gathered, and they were talking about it. So here's one more clip from Bryan Cranston from Breaking Bad.
We realize that without organized labor, management will just keep stuffing their pockets. They don't and will not ever just go, you know what? I don't think this is being fair to those people. I'm going to pay them more. It's just not what they do.
All right, Bruce, we had talked a few episodes ago about, if we were to put money down, when is this thing ending? You were a little bit more optimistic. I was much more pessimistic, saying that this could go on until later this year. And then the freak out moment would be once kind of the NFL season, college football season, was kind of wrapping up. And then the networks or everybody needs something to air come January. That's going to be the problem. So, what are you thinking right now? Or are you hearing anything?
I think there's, it could go whenever. It could go whenever, but they probably will ride it out because it isn't fair. It isn't fair that these people are getting next to nothing. And these networks are making pretty big bucks off this stuff. So they're, and the studios, come on. If they make a big deal about Margot Robbie getting what, $50 million for doing Barbie. Well, she's a producer on the thing. She also is a blue chip star. And I hate when we see these clips of, some famous person, like if Meryl Streep decided she was going to walk with the others. That isn't the instance at all. Meryl Streep and all those blue chip names should not be on the picket line because they don't have a beef with what's going on. It's the guy who you maybe recognize his face, but you don't know his name, that is getting jobbed in all of this.
Right.
And those are the people that I think those stories need to be told much more. And I would not doubt that the story about Margot getting 50 million is a studio generated story because they want to say, see, look, they're making big money. Why aren't, come on, don't be crying to us. And I think the AI thing could be a real problem. I've seen some things that have already been written that are not bad, done by a computer because they've been able to input all this other stuff. But where did the other stuff come from that they're trying to duplicate or mimic or whatever that gives us this thing? I would not doubt that in the future, the computers are going to be doing all of our writing. I would not doubt that. But you've got to hold the line somewhere because are we eliminating humans entirely? Is that our goal with every job? You know how it is where they say, well, we're going to outsource this and we're going to let computers do it. Yeah, maybe sometimes you need that personal touch that comes from having a human in there. I don't know, but I find it really disturbing. And I'll turn on Entertainment Tonight on a regular basis. And it's like, oh, today, look who showed up on the picket line. Right. And it's, I don't care. I don't care that the big names, because they'll come for an hour or whatever, eat a sandwich and act like they're part of the normal people. And what you're doing is not necessarily cheating them out of a job or money, but you are cheating all of those ancillary businesses that rely on this to drive their business. The drivers, the caterers, the set builders, the electricians. I mean, all those kinds of jobs. It's a factory town. Hollywood is a factory town. And if you start cutting that, and yet these ones are making just a statement, come on. I don't know why those studios need so much money for their executives. I've never believed that that's a good way of doing business, because when you see that somebody's getting a $400 million paycheck for the year, really? Is that, did they make that kind of decision? A $400 million one? There should be caps on those things. But, now I'm sounding political, and I don't mean to.
Yeah, and it is. I read a story a few weeks ago, even where they were actually talking about that point, because somebody brought up like, where are all the stars while everyone else is the rank and file are marching? But that's the point too, is that it gets a little bit touchy, because the percentage of people that are making tons and tons of money is very small compared to the rank and file, which is really has the most to lose out of this.
Right.
And then, as you mentioned, with like a lot of these folks, they're producers on shows now. They're also executives. They're not necessarily running a studio, but it's hard, sure, they're a member of the Actors Guild and maybe they're a member of the Writers Guild, but if they're a producer or also doing directing work, their hands are in too many pots, and it's probably best that they just stay on the sideline and let things work, because it's at some point you got to recuse yourself, and I think that's what happens.
We've had, now for me, the impact is the actors are not doing interviews. They're not going to be talking about a project that's coming up. And I get that. I see the impact it has on me. But some actors who are producers will do an interview. Now, is that really, are you playing the game or what? Which hat is a better hat or a bigger hat? And which one should you be wearing at any given time?
Well, hopefully things will wrap up soon because we need
We want it.
we need our content.
Yeah.
We need something. We need something. I know you've got a list here of.
Okay, I've got a list of films that are out there that I have seen some and not seen others. Okay. Golda, which is the Golda Meir story.
Oh, yeah.
Is one that I think it's starting now in theaters. And it could be another shot for her to win another Oscar. It's set in just a limited period of time, the 19 days of the Yom Kippur War, and how she kind of negotiated all that, what she did, what her thought process was. And it's a great character piece, because I do not think of Golda Meir when I think of Helen Mirren. They are not alike at all, but I think that she captures the essence and she brings to life a character that, did we forget her? Did we still think about her? I don't know, but that's one that's out there that's hanging fire. Blue Jean. Have you heard of Blue Jean?
No.
This is set in the 1980s in England, and it's about a gym teacher who has this secret kind of private life where she's a lesbian and she doesn't dare come out because she's in Margaret Thatcher England. Mm-hmm. And what does this mean for her career? These are things that it seems so long ago, and yet these issues come up. And it's a fascinating look at the times. They really get the costumes right. They get the period right. You see things and you think, yeah, I remember that. I remember the 80s like that. And it has people that maybe you don't recognize, but they've been in a lot of British TV series and things. There's one called The Lesson, and this stars Richard E. Grant. You remember him from, oh man, he's been in so many things. He was nominated for an Oscar for the thing with Melissa McCarthy, where she was a writer. I wish I could tell you right off the top of my head, but in this, he plays another author. Okay. But he's a haughty kind of rich author who, is, he's in the driver's seat. He's not a rank and file guy. And he and his wife hire a tutor for their son. And the tutor sees how this family dynamic is all shaking down. Daryl McCormick, who was in Good Luck to You, Leo Grand. Did you remember that with Emma Thompson? He played the guy who was her kind of sex therapist.
Yep.
He was the prostitute. He plays the tutor in this one. Julie Delpy, if you remember her from all those things with Ethan Hawke, she plays the wife. And it's a fascinating look at a family situation. Challengers is a film that's set in the tennis world. And it's about 3 tennis players, and it's who's up, who's down, who's wherever. Zendaya plays a champion. I think like Serena, Venus, one of those kind of,
Sure.
Big superstars. And then Josh O'Connor from The Crown, he played Prince Charles in the last. He's one of the tennis players. And Mike Feist, who was in West Side Story and has been in Broadway on Dear Evan Hansen. Those are the 3. And there's this like who's with whom at what time. Now it's done by the guy who did Call Me by Your Name. Mm-hmm. And it has the potential to be very dirty. I'm just throwing that out. It could be a very, very dirty. Next Goal Wins. Taika Waititi, the guy behind Jojo Rabbit, and a lot of those, What We Do in the Shadows, a very kind of fun I think he's New Zealand. I don't want to say he's Australian, but I think he's New Zealand director who focuses on a football coach or a soccer coach played by Michael Fassbender. Mm-hmm. Who has to try and turn a Samoan team into winners. Now, this is very Ted Lasso in its concept. But I think it could be very, very funny, and it could be one of those kind of breakout things. Again, these are all these little kind of pocket films that will show up but not be in theaters as long as Barbie is. So look for them, because I think, and if nothing else, within a month after that, more than likely they'll turn up on streaming services.
Yeah.
And so this could be what we're watching for the next 2 or 3 months.
Right. Well, and these are also those films too that when the Oscar nominations come out
They'll be
and
in
we
there.
we get by, you know, we'll know the big ones, but then all of a sudden we're looking at each other and being like, wait, next
And
goal
if all
wins.
you need
What
are
is it?
like
Yeah.
200 people to put your name first. They could be there. Now they know that they know what to do. So yeah, and it's fun because I've seen a number of them. They'll send them to me and then they'll say, see what you think, and if you can write something, it'd be great. And it's fascinating because a lot of times they're better than most of the things that you're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love a good small time film. You know, sometimes those are the best ones because it's under the radar. It catches you by surprise. You have no expectations, and it's just kind of fun to see.
And we're getting some of the new series are coming back. The morning show on Apple is
right
to be back with Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston. Another one that I did watch was The Changeling, and it's based on a novel by Victor LaValle or Victor LaValle, depending on how you pronounce it, who also does the narration for the film. And it's so bizarre because it goes back in time and forward in time and back, way back in time. I mean, in the first episode, you must be in about 6 different time periods. And it shows how maybe there was some kind of, I don't know, black magic that was going on, and it affected different generations and what it turned out to be for these kids that are in today's world. Yeah, fascinating. Lakeith Stanfield is in it, and a good acting exercise, but I think it has far too much to try and unpack right away.
Okay.
And that'll be coming up in September.
We're coming up also around that period where my 3-month free trial of Apple TV Plus is about to expire, and I'm not. So we just watched Silo, which it was okay. I know it's gotten some decent traction on like Rotten Tomatoes from critics and fans. I thought it started out a little bit slow. It's your typical. The story on that one is it's a, you know, a post-apocalyptic kind of sci-fi world. There's 10,000 people living underground in a silo, and they are governed by the Pact. And the Pact is, you know, just their constitution, their law and order. But the society is broken down to, you have this IT branch that runs the computer systems and keeps things chugging along. That's run by Tim Robbins. You have a judicial branch, which kind of enforces some of the Pact and, you know, make sure everybody is law abiding. And Common stars as one of the leaders of judicial, who kind of, you know, runs a crew that it's almost like a military group. There's also the sheriff's office, which is more of a police type of thing, which is the main character, Juliet Nichols. She works like down below where it keeps the engines running, but kind of gets pushed into this situation where she's the next sheriff, because one of the things that happens is if you say you want to go outside the silo, it's irrevocable, and you have to go out to clean off the little camera that shows the desolate world that has become. And this isn't really much of a spoiler because it sets up the entire series, but the wife of the current sheriff goes outside to clean, and then a year later the sheriff himself goes outside to clean, but kind of picks Juliet Nichols to become the next sheriff. And you know, so there's this mystery as to like whether what you see on that screen is actually what it's true to be. But then it's also, in like a lot of these stories, is Tim Robbins a good guy or is he a bad guy? Is Common a good guy or is he a bad guy? Or are they just put in such unusual circumstances that there's really no good or bad? Everybody is just kind of trying to act within the best interests of the society that they're running. So it's not a bad series. I thought that the first few episodes were a little bit of a slog. It definitely picks up once you get through about 3 or 4. It's 10 episodes, a few familiar faces. Obviously, as I said, Tim Robbins is in it. Common is in it. Ian Glenn, he played Jorah Mormont on Game of Thrones. He plays the father of Sheriff Nichols, Juliet Nichols, who's played by Rebecca Ferguson. And then one other person who's in it that a lot of folks have probably seen lately, Harriet Walter. She plays this woman who lives all the way at the bottom of society, but she was in Succession as the mother of the 3 Roy siblings, younger Roy siblings. So it's a good one if you need something to watch. We've been kind of like bouncing through things and slamming through things. So that, and then of course I've been now watching Ahsoka, which is back on, just made its debut, the latest Star Wars series. So
do you find though that Apple has a lot of dark shows?
They do, yeah.
It's like some executive must have had some midlife crisis or something, and then is trying to explain all of it through these, because I honestly, besides Ted Lasso and maybe the After Party, I'm hard pressed to think of comedies that they really embrace. The one with Harrison Ford,
that was good. Yeah. That's Shrinking with Harrison Ford and Jason Segel. Yeah, that one was good. My wife and I we watched it right before Silo and really enjoyed it, and kind of looking forward already to season 2. There's a few like that. Yeah.
It's like these midlife crisis kind of concepts. And I would like, Snoopy, I think, is the only thing that's on there that is not really kind of dark underneath.
Right. Yeah. For All Mankind.
I don't know.
I love For All Mankind, the alternate history space show.
But again, you're getting into another world. They'll go to another world to, I think, try and make commentary about our world today.
Right. Yeah. It's very sci-fi driven.
Yeah.
A lot of sci-fi.
I don't know that I would see that as Apple's best calling card.
Yeah, I'm like really on the fence here, because even with the morning show, I watched season 1. I watched about half of season 2 and then kind of got sidetracked and then ended up canceling Apple TV Plus. So now I've got the decision is like, all right, am I going to go back and watch the next 5 episodes and then I'll stick around and watch the 3rd season, or am I at the point now where I let the subscription run out, I cancel it, I wait 6 months or a year, come back in, and then just kind of like crush through things, because I just feel like with Apple TV Plus, it just does not have the programming yet. Still like Hulu or Netflix, which those I can't cancel. There's just too much stuff that comes on them constantly.
I think Apple put a lot of money in a few projects, and it's big money. This is not just anything, but I don't know if I were to choose that would be one of the first ones I would pick for my extra channels.
It's a good one to, you get your whatever 30-day, 90-day free every time you buy an iPhone. So it's really, that's what it's good for. You get your free phone, or well, not a free phone. You pay for your phone, you get a little Apple TV Plus on top of it. I mean, it's not expensive. It's like what, $6 a month. So it's one where if you let it go for a few months and you don't really watch it, you don't necessarily feel guilty about it. It's not like Netflix has creeped up, or HBO. Well, now it's Max. They've creeped up in the price where it's, $16, $17 a month. And you start to notice that one if you're not watching. Apple TV Plus is still low enough where you're kind of like, it's just $6. I'll let it. It's like that gym membership that, they catch you, it's like, I guess $12.
What about Disney Plus? Then are you sold on that one, or is that on the bundle?
No, well, that's with the kids, and I've got the bundle. So it's like, I have Hulu, Disney Plus, and ESPN Plus bundled together, which maybe if I was only doing one of them, I would think twice, like, all right, well, maybe I'll drop this, but the bundle it's pretty cheap. So I'm not paying a whole lot for all 3.
So what is the determiner then for you to choose a service, a streaming service? Is it a certain program that gets you in? Is it the price? Is it, the potential it has? Or where does this all land? Because how would you choose? In this day, you can't have it all. I'm sorry to say
No,
that you can't
no.
have it.
I'm
So how
I'm
do you
I
pick?
yeah, I don't know. It's a good I think right now because of the kids, I'm fine having Disney Plus semi-permanently,
But
so
you like it too because you get all that Star Wars stuff, and
and
you
I get
like
all the
Star
Star
Wars
Wars
stuff.
stuff, right? But it's also, when the kid like ESPN Plus, I get that bundled in. I don't remember the last time I turned it on, but because I get the Hulu and the Disney Plus packaged in there, I occasionally will put on ESPN Plus, but not enough for me to. I would definitely never subscribe to that one separately.
It's fascinating because you hear people complain about cable when cable keeps raising its prices and stuff, and I can't afford this. This is terrible. And yet they'll add on all these streaming services. And so what gives? And maybe that's the way it just all has to be. All is a la carte. And you're
Yeah.
just things as you go along. And maybe you just have a buy-in for X number of weeks or months.
Yeah, I think at some point, and I think it'll come a little bit more as the kids get older and we're less attached to certain things. But I feel like I'm getting really close to the point where I don't have anything against Apple TV Plus because I do think it has some good programs. It's just not enough for me to commit 12 months out of the year. And I think we're getting to that point where I need one like $6 a month option. So I'm maybe going to do Apple TV Plus this month. And then maybe next month I do Peacock. And then maybe the month after that I do Paramount Plus.
Is it hard to go ditch them? Is it hard to get out of the?
That's where, unlike cable, because cable's a nightmare. Like cable, you're on the phone for 45 minutes. Because I did it a year ago when I finally cut the cord.
Right.
And it takes forever and it's a pain in the butt. But with all of these streaming services, you just log in online. If you got to make sure you get it at the right time, because you don't like get a refund of $3.18 because you only used
Right.
42% of it for the month.
You
So
got to jump before the month is up.
correct. So I go to my Google Calendar, I put in a reminder, like this is the day I got to go cancel Apple TV Plus. I'll do it. It'll take me through the end of the month and I'll still have like 3 more days to watch it because I do it a few days in advance. And then the first of the month, I'll subscribe to something else. And as long as you can commit to doing that, you can manage them and you can opt in and out. And it's pretty darn easy. And that's the advantage they have over cable, to be honest. It's not even, it's almost to the point where it's not the cost anymore because although I'm saving a lot of money by not subscribing. I have YouTube TV for my regular
Right.
over the air. I figured it out one time, like by dumping the cable, I'm saving like $100 and something a month, which
Can I
adds
ask,
up.
how much do you spend in a month on services? And
You have to factor in the cost for internet.
sure.
So between internet, YouTube TV, and then the other streaming, it's somewhere between 160 and 200 a month.
Well, that's not too bad.
No,
Not too bad. I was well over 200.
that's
Over.
where I was. Yeah.
And I thought, this is silly. I don't watch all these channels. It's just a matter of I'm too lazy to go and cancel things.
Yep.
And when cable dropped my email, and I no longer had email through my cable system, I thought, well, this is the wake-up call I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I would, like you, I went to YouTube TV and I was very impressed with that. I find it kind of strange when you're watching a show where it kind of goes to your moment of zen, where they're covering up an ad that isn't going to be shown on your thing.
Right.
But I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And I do I am now looking more for old content. I really want to see old content, not because I am nostalgic, because that's not me, but I want to see how good it was back then compared to what we have now, what the quality is, and some of the writing was good, but a lot of the production was not as good. You'll see an office or a living room or whatever, and it barely has furniture in it. And today, everything is so overly designed and done that I think it's made for these very high def TVs where you can look at every little aspect and realize that that ashtray is there for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's fascinating, but I do think I spent too much money on it.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's my life.
I mean, it's obviously for you as somebody who needs to be on top of things, having a little bit more than somebody is fine, you know. But yeah, it's tough. Like, as a, you know, when you're just trying to get through with your household and figure out, okay, you know, the wife watches this, the kids watch this, I watch this. What do we need? And honestly, I have not noticed missing very much since ditching traditional cable. There's a few things here and there that I can't watch anymore, but honestly, it doesn't make much of a difference to me.
How vigilant are you with your children? Do you say you only get 1 hour of television time at night? Do you really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I grew up turning the TV on in the morning with the test pattern and turning it off at night when the test pattern came back on. That was how much TV I watched as a child.
Oh man. Yeah, no, the kids are they're pretty good with it. I mean, it's getting a little bit tougher now as they've gotten older, and there's other things like, okay, we're not watching TV, but I'm going to play my video game system, and or, you know, so we try to limit the screen time. You know, we try to insist that they're reading X number, you know, 30 minutes a day of reading as opposed to something else.
Do you think you're the exception and not the rule?
Yeah, I'm watching a lot more than they are, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But for them, yeah, no, I mean, but we talk. I mean, there's some, we know with some parents, they let their kids watch anything. There's another family that we know that they're pretty similar to us with how much TV they let their kids watch, and so it's you know, there's no right or wrong here. You know, every family has to make their own decisions. We just choose to limit it, and the kids don't have TVs in their bedrooms. We have a TV in the living room, we have a TV in the family room. I have a TV in our bedroom, but we're trying to limit it. So,
you know, it's weird because I don't. Do you look at the ratings of anything before you let your kids?
Yep.
You do.
Yep.
Okay. I do think that because television doesn't really have those standards anymore, or at least it's not as policeable as it was, that it's impossible now to say that kids are being influenced by books or whatever when it's a free-for-all on television.
Yeah.
I don't think you can say that, you know, oh, my kids are going into whatever because they've watched too much television or what. There's not enough policing on television itself to kind of guide you through that. And I remember the times when there was Family Hour. The first hour of the broadcast night was family television, and it should not have been anything that had any adult content. And I think parents were safe then, just saying, oh, you can watch until 8 o'clock, and then we're not watching TV. That's not the case now, because 7 o'clock shows can be very R-rated.
With us, we rely a little bit with like a Common Sense Media, where we will go to that website. I think it's pretty good. It'll give you some information of, like, you know, kids say it's 12 plus, parents say it's 10 plus, we say it's 12 plus. You know, it'll give you that kind of information, and it'll also explain like why the show. So this one has a little bit too much sex talk, or this one talks about, you know, alcohol or drugs or cigarettes, and it gives you some decent information. But you know what you mentioned too with that, you know, that hour block of like, these shows should be safe. Were they? Because I've gone back and seen, you know, like some shows, like we haven't let our kids watch Seinfeld, and I mean, like, Seinfeld was kind of like, well, that's not adult time, but it is. They're talking about sex and all those
started out the night on NBC on Thursdays, and come on,
that isn't appropriate for 12-year-olds.
That's not Happy Days.
No, it's not. So, you know, I know, like, you kind of think about it as like nostalgically and all that, but there's stuff today that if we had the shows that I grew up with today, we would not let the kids watch the ones that I was allowed to watch. Definitely not.
Yeah, it's funny how in its day, something like Cinemax, you'd go, oh, the dirty one.
It's
That's-
Skinemax.
Yeah, right. We knew right away
Yeah.
that was the dirty one. And so if you were subscribing to that, good luck. You're getting anything and everything. That's the bad one. But today, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know that you can even, there are some of those high-end cable networks now, though. I mean, high-end in terms of channel numbers, where they've bleeped it or they've done somehow, but it's still the concept. There are dirty movies on those channels too. They just haven't said 2 or 3 words out loud.
Yeah. I think it's interesting with HBO in particular, because I remember as a kid, like as a teenager, not as like an 8 or a 9-year-old, but as a teenager, if you stayed up just late enough on a Saturday night, you would catch something like their Real Sex Show, right? Where it would be things like that, where it's very adult content, there was nudity and all that. And if you go to HBO now, they've really gone and scrubbed those things. You can't find Real Sex, or what was the other one? It was like Taxi Cab Confessions.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they're kind of dirty, kind of raunchy. And I think HBO, and I think that's part of the reason why they rebranded HBO Max as just Max, because they're trying to get away from that concept of HBO being very adult. Like it was never quite Skinemax, Cinemax, because it never got there. But HBO, you knew that if you stayed up past 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, you were going to see some stuff. So if you're a teenage boy at like 15, 16 or whatever, and your parents didn't know you were staying up late to watch something until 2 a.m, it was an interesting time to watch HBO.
What was that Bunny Ranch one?
Oh yeah, right. They went on to the
it's like outside of Las Vegas somewhere.
Yeah,
and then they would go out there and it'd be a bunch of prostitutes basically lining up, and then they'd pick one of them and they'd show the encounter.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think HBO does any of that kind of programming anymore, and I think they've largely eliminated it from the archive. So you can't, like, even if you subscribe to where they have pretty much all their programming ever on like Max now, I don't think you can watch any of those, because they've tried to really nothing more than R-rated, and we're gonna tamp it down. So
yeah, it's fascinating how those things shift. And you look at something now on like The Bachelor,
right?
They're going in directions that I'd be really careful about letting my kids see.
Yep.
And again, I'm not that person. I'm not one who's uptight about any of that stuff, but I do think that maybe there's a time for innocence, and they need to have that I don't have to know something about this. Yeah. And I think those kind of shows, which are showing at 7 o'clock at night in my territory, are a little too much right away after dinner.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how about this? We'll kind of wrap up the show now. If you have,
sorry, I got on a tangent. I started.
It's an interesting
that you're missing, and then we got onto this. But I know films on those streaming services.
Absolutely. So, how about we do this too, and we'll just open it up, and if we happen to get some feedback, we'll talk about it on the next episode. But if you're a parent, you're listening to this show, give us some thoughts. Reach out, send us an email to podcasts@lee.net. There will be a link in this episode show notes as well, and just shoot us a line. Like, are you watching streaming? Do you have traditional cable? How update are you with the kids when it comes to what they're watching, things like that? And we can pick up the discussion in the future. Sound good?
I think that sounds great. That sounds like fun. Because I want to know. I watch everything, right. So there is no barrier for me. But I do want to know if people do have those barriers and how they determine what they are.
Perfect. All right. Well, on that note, we will let things go, and we will be back again next week with another episode of Streamed and Screened.
Have a great one.